Stop.
Hillary's book blamed him.
A prominent Trump supporter, Aubrey Shines, produced an online video attacking me.
John Oliver mocks him, calls him a nut job from Tampa. Trump thanked him. So he continues to shine the light.
We can do better, we will do better, but we'll only make it happen if you are informed. That's what we're here to do.
America shines when you're connected to Aubrey Shines. Here's your host, Aubrey Shines.
Hello and welcome to America Shines. I am your host, Aubrey Shines. When politicians speak out about the plight of blacks in America, in this great United States, their focus is predominantly on those who reside in urban areas. They often discuss the lack of resources for blacks in Democrat-run cities by focusing on issues such as a lack of education or employment opportunities. While these are indeed important issues that need to be addressed, this limited focus ignores the plight of many blacks in America that are enduring liberal policies, sometimes not even realizing that this is the root cause of their difficulties. How else could you explain why they keep voting for the same people? Who are the source of their despair? As you can see, poverty can be much more than a lack of money or work or even motivation. Joining us to discuss this issue is Pastor John K. Amakaju, who is the founder of the Erased Project. The Erased Project is a movement that loves life of every color and sees all mankind, born and unborn, as one blood and equally lovable. They seek to unite America behind three core objectives: abolish abortion, ban CRT and grooming in schools, and more importantly, and just as important, demolish all Marxist ideologies. Pastor John, thank you so much, sir, for taking part of your day to be able to share with our vast audience here of what's going on. I want to get right into this, Pastor John, with you. There seems to be a liberal push all the time. Every 4 years is something, not that I subscribe to Malcolm X and his ideology, but he is the one that said every 4 years the white liberals come around, partner with black liberals, and they do the same thing. He said that this is a bankrupt attitude because the policies that are on the left are actually demolishing individuals that are poor, whether they're black, white, and brown. They are demolishing the core belief of our nation. Let's go straight into the shooting portion of this. I'm sure that you're very cognitive of the fact that every single weekend, by the way, in my ex-home high school and college city of Chicago, Illinois, it is uncommon not to hear there have been 30, 40, 50 shootings per week. By the way, Pastor John, these are not whites killing blacks. This is not the KKK that's doing it. These are black leaders, black mayors, black city council people, black attorney generals there. Why is it then that, Pastor John, blacks continue to put individuals like this in office to their own demise? Pastor John.
It's ignorance. That's the bottom line. Ignorance and gross negligence. We are supporting and voting for a party who historically has sought to kill and destroy the black community. It's insanity. We keep repeating the same thing over and over again. You mentioned it rather eloquently. Every 4 years, we support the white liberal. Malcolm X also said that we've been bamboozled, we've been hoodwinked, we've been taken, and we've been had. We are being lied to by people who claim that they have our best interest in mind, and they don't. While at the same time, there are charlatans, there are tricksters, there are people who race bait and race hustle, like Jesse Jackson, like Reverend Al Sharpton, like Ben Crump, like many black pastors today who speak about these issues when it's a white cop about killing a black man, but they have nothing to say about black on black crime. In Chicago in particular, there have been 427 victims this year that have been killed. Let me say that again. 427 victims have been killed this year in Chicago alone. And when you go through the information and take a look at the age range of many of these individuals that have been killed, the average age is an individual who is 28 years old. So we have a black youth problem. But that doesn't come without an albatross. The albatross is upon the parents. Not only do we have a black youth problem, we have a black parenting problem. We need for black fathers to stop being sperm donors and absent and sleeping with 10 women at the same time, and to be actively engaged in their children's life. That is where the onus and the blame needs to be placed. And we need to stop voting for a political party that doesn't care about us in the first place.
You know, Pastor John, I've been echoing that. I wrote a book a few years ago, and we hit #2 on Amazon. I stayed #2 for a long time. We were answering the race issue here. And again, I don't think you speak of being eloquent. I'm listening to you, and I've been watching you. I've been following you. I've been really introducing so many people to your content out there, because I think really the work that you're doing is really powerful. And I go back to something that you have echoed here today for our audience, and that's this. It is the black father. And I've been saying this all along.
Yes.
When you go back, even during Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction, what you would still find is the black family that was still intact. You still found the black dad that was there. Now, 7 to 8 of our black women in black communities, they're producing children, and the state is taking care of them. Yet, Pastor John, when you say something like that, I'm sure you've been called a sellout, a Oriole, an Uncle Tom, that you're carrying the water for some party. How do you respond to that type of buffoonery, Pastor John?
Well, here's the reality. We know that accusations come from Satan. One of the things that Paul told Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, after referencing that perilous times will come in the last days, perilous times being dangerous times, he mentioned that you'll also contend with false accusers. When you translate false accusers in the Greek, it gives you the term diabolos. And diabolos equals serpent. We are dealing with Satan. So for every person who gives me a false accusation, and you as well, we're dealing with Satan. We're dealing with the enemy. Now, many years ago, you talked about dark spirits and evil spirits residing over communities and neighborhoods and locations. We know that we are fighting against spiritual wickedness in high places, and we must push back. I've been labeled now a white supremacist. Okay, I'm as black as they come, but I'm now a white supremacist. Why? Because I went to a school board meeting in California and told them there were 10 things that black students don't need. I mentioned that we don't need affirmative action. We don't need the soft bigotry of low expectations. We don't need to be pandered to. We don't need the test scores reduced so that we can compete with white people and Indian students and Asian students. I also mentioned that we don't need white liberals trying to tell us that they know what's best for us. And now I'm a white supremacist. And so I've been practicing this white thing. I hope I'm doing a good job at it as well. But I'm a white man in America. You know, my father is from Nigeria. I was born in the U.S. And, you know, I have to say, Aubrey, that it's hard being a white man in America. You know, it's rather difficult for me to do this.
I think you're doing a very, very poor job, Pastor John, at being a white guy in America. Listen, we're coming back with the founder of the Erase Project. You want to stay tuned. This guy is on fire. He's doing a tremendous work in the United States of America. What I love about Pastor John, I believe he has a Christian ethos. It's not about one's ethnicity. It's about that we're all part of the human race. Stay tuned. We're coming right back. I'm really excited to have the founder of the Erase Project with us, Pastor John. He's doing a tremendous job. I think everyone that really is paying attention to what's going on in this country can't help but to notice this strong Christian family man, loves the values that he espouses on a day-to-day basis. And he's obviously making an impact because, as you heard from his own mouth, he is now considered a white supremacist. I understand where he is. I've been often categorized in many magazines and radio shows and TV shows as being the such. And the last time I checked, I wasn't, but they say that I am. So I guess he and I have a little something in common. Pastor John, I want to go right back with you here because one of the things that I think is plaguing the United States of America is our education system. Case in point, you and I both understand that it was the Democratic Party that fought against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, did not want blacks to be a part of this American idea. And afterwards, we saw things like the KKK, the Jim Crow laws, and entitlement projects. Again, all brought to you by, you got it, the Democratic Party. They're still doing the same thing. A majority of our neighborhoods in black, poor white, poor brown communities, they're plagued because the majority of those kids are not able to read properly. I love in the last segment that you brought up the affirmative action piece. And I believe, as you and I both know, the Supreme Court finally said, hey, let's stop this soft bigotry and let everybody have this meritocracy idea, earn it. And if you don't earn it, you don't get it. Pastor John, when you look at the educational plight in America and you see these poor black, brown kids, they're not living up to it, please explain to our audience, how is that white supremacy, Pastor John?
You know, it has nothing to do with white supremacy, but it has everything to do with parents failing to do their responsibility and their job to make sure that their children are prepared to go into kindergarten after they are born. You know, it's important that parents take the time at home to teach their children colors and sight words and read to them when they're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 before they go into kindergarten. Because if a student is not reading on grade level and doing math on grade level by the 3rd grade, more than likely that student will never catch up. This issue that we're contending with in society, and it also riddles the white community and the Hispanic community as well. But the issue that we're addressing right now is the black community. It all is based upon the failure for parents to be engaged. The lack of parental engagement is a major pandemic in the black community. I just have to share this passage of scripture with you from Proverbs chapter 1. Verse 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Verse 8 says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." In other words, the scripture is telling us there that a son should receive instruction from both parents. The understanding from this text points towards the fact that a child would be reared and parented and receive instruction and wisdom from 2 parents, not just from 1 parent. And so the black community is greatly broken and feeble and diminished because we have only 1 parent primarily. You know, the majority of black homes are led by a single parent. 80%, I believe, is that number. And when you consider the 40s and the 50s, the black marriage rate rivaled that of whites. But today, 80% of homes are led by a single parent. So the son can't get instructions from the father. They can't even obey Proverbs chapter 1, verses 7 through 8, because there's no father there to teach. So who teaches the child? The streets. They go and become criminals. They get into crime. That's why we have these issues in New Orleans, in Philadelphia, and in Chicago, and many of these cities that are run by Democrats. They can care less, push them into the inner city, allow them to remain there, and slowly but surely they will take their own selves out. And that's what we are contending with. I believe that the answer for Black America is to get back to the foundations that made us great in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, and the 60s, which was faith, family, and education void of special interest.
You know, I'm glad that you echoed that. A few weeks ago, Pastor John, I did an entire segment where I kind of amplified what guys like Charlemagne, he's a buffoon in my opinion, and DJ Envy and these guys. These are individuals. I watched an interview that he conducted with Larry Elder. I know Larry Elder. I think a lot of Larry Elder. And I watched their visceral hatred towards Elder simply because he was espousing what I call statistical facts that they couldn't refute. So they just begin to call him the N-word, et cetera, et cetera. In that, when you just echoed about both parents being apart, part of my background is behavior. And one of the things that I've been able to study for a very, very long time, and these are stats rather, that no one can refute. This is out there. Anyone can go out to the Department of Education. They can go out to the Department of Agriculture. They can find these stats readily. They're out there. They're available. And this is what I found, Pastor John, that if you take 2 families, black and white, and if they do the exact same thing, 1, do not have children before marriage. Number 2, get an education. 3, wait to have children after the marriage. Here's what the stat proved. There's 0 difference in their upward mobility in this nation. Zero difference. There's not a slight difference. There's zero difference. Yet, from our politicians, we don't hear it. And unfortunately, we don't even hear it from pulpits across America. I want you to address the educational divide, if you don't mind, with our audience, because again, if those numbers are accurate, and they are, we've proven them to be so, why is it that people like Joy Reid and people like Charlemagne, I refuse to call him a god unless he's a small g, because he's a god in his own mind. He certainly hasn't created anything. Why is it that these individuals have voice in this country, but voices like yours, sir, you're muffled. Algorithms are set against you. They don't want you to speak. Pastor John, speak to our audience.
Listen, I'm probably one of the top 10 most censored and banned people on social media. I go to school board meetings speaking out against many of the issues that you're bringing up, in particular, the false triune idol of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, we should be teaching children how to think and not what to think. It was once said, you know, can little Johnny read? No. Can little Johnny write? No. Can little Johnny spell? No. Does little Johnny know sight words? No. But little Johnny knows about gender fluidity. And little Johnny knows about the 1619 Project. And little Johnny knows about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are missing the mark as we focus on social emotional learning, and we rid ourselves of reading, writing, and arithmetic and putting the emphasis there, focusing on academics and making sure that our children are able to compete in a global economy. As we move towards a more progressive education system, void of virtues and values, we see the fruit that remains. In the Black community, oftentimes the students are underperforming and they are behind Hispanic students who speak English as a second language. This is a great travesty, but it wasn't always this way, Aubrey. When you look at the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, you know, Blacks excelled. We built our own colleges and universities. We built our own schools. When you look at pictures in comparison to the 30s and the 40s, in comparison to today, the individuals looked more groomed. They looked older. They looked sophisticated. Today, we see that we have this rap culture, this hip hop influence that has destroyed the Black community. And so I preach this all the time. I talk about it all the time, that we must get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. We must get back to education. My mother took care of 4 children making no more than $28,000 a year. Guess what? I'm now a successful preacher. My brother Joey is an executive in a technology company. My brother Chris is doing phenomenal in real estate. And my sister Angela is getting ready to open her first practice in 2 weeks. It can be done. And my mother is Black, and she took care of 4 children by herself. It can be done.
Pastor John, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to stay over one more segment. I didn't plan this, but you've opened up Pandora's box here. I want to come back because I see that there's a void, especially in our ecumenical settings across this country. Everyone, I'm going to come back with Pastor John here in just a moment. We're going to address something very sensitive. A lot of people are going to probably be a bit squeamish, but you're going to enjoy it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. cry of freedom. He is the founder of the Erased Project. I recommend everyone pay attention. We're going to make sure that all of his social media handles are out there. But Pastor John has agreed to stay with us. Just one more segment here. I think one of the most, what I call divisive things that are happening in our nation happens Sundays in pulpits across America. I don't think there's a better voice to speak on this issue other than Pastor John. Pastor John, I want to kind of go straight here, if you don't mind, sir. I did an entire segment several weeks ago where I showed individuals like Pastor Jamal Bryant, and there are several others. I'm not just singling him out. They're pushing things like, oh, I don't know, let's own marijuana farms, outside of his horrible theology, and I have a background in such. I'll leave that part alone. I want to stay more focused here on the obvious. Why is it that in our black pulpits, they're no longer espousing the things that really made black and white America really come together? People really forget this, and that is, it was black and white pulpits that came together during one of the most horrible times in our nation. And we can go back to the Revolutionary War. We can go through the Civil War. We can go through post-restoration period, Reconstruction. And what you'll find was and is there was a collaboration, black and white pastors all saying the same thing. Let's eradicate these bad, ungodly ideas. Yet we're seeing, unfortunately, what I call an unfettered move by so many black in pulpits that will not address for issues like life, issues like education. They won't talk about the plight of what's going on in their area. They're putting these black people in office for the last 70 years. They're getting no return. I know a lot about investments, and I can tell you if I put something for 7 decades into a firm and I'm not getting any residual, I'm out of that investment immediately. Why is there a bankruptcy, Pastor John, in our black pulpits? Are they afraid to speak it? Are they ignorant of it? I'd love to hear your opinion, Pastor John.
There are many reasons. You can start with the fact that it's cowardice. You know, Paul told us that many would hold the truth in unrighteousness. We also see in Scripture in the Old Testament where it says that my watchmen are blind and they are dumb dogs who won't bark. The role of a dog is to alert his owner when danger is coming. The role of a watchman is to get up into the watchtower, spend long nights watching and seeing and peering into the distance to see when trouble is coming. And trouble has come into America and into the black church, but many of the preachers don't want to address this because many want to preach today, but few want to warn. When you warn people, that means you must cause them to come up to the standard of God versus the standard of man. And so Jamal Bryant in particular, who wants to create a marijuana farm in order to get businesses into the black community and to support black men and women in Atlanta, that's foolery. That's foolishness. It's asinine to think that a preacher would even utter those words. He is not a shepherd. He's a hireling. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's why we are seeing many of these things. When I consider many of the pastors who won't touch the life issue, who won't address this new initiative to make the homosexual community synonymous with the black community. When you think of men like Bishop T.D. Jakes, who will do all of the movies, all of the sitcoms, write all of the books, but when it comes to heavy issues, he will avoid the heavy issues. You want to know why? Because he wants to keep the money coming in. He does not want to sound like a conservative. And at the end of the day, my redemption does not come from the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. It came from Christ. But we have moved away from preaching the truth of God's word to the point now where we're passing out candy every Sunday morning. Who wants a sucker? Who wants a lollipop? Who wants some Skittles? Who wants some Starburst? We're passing out candy. It's trick or treat. It's Halloween every Sunday morning in the black church. They're passing out sweet stuff instead of causing their membership in their congregation to come up to reasonable standards and reasonable points of worship where they can now improve in their life. We have too many cowards leading us and not enough warrior preachers.
Let me go on a quick route. I like doing this, something I learned in debate when I was in school many years ago. There's a question that's asked, and there's just kind of a real repetitive yes or no. I want to hit you with just several of those, if you don't mind, right before we go off the air here. When I hear individuals ask this question, I have a response, but I would love to hear your response. Let me have a little rapid fire with you here. Can a church, a mature church, Pastor John, can they really be sanctioned by God if they support the LGBT community, Pastor John?
No, you can't support the LGBTQ community and be sanctioned by God. No.
What about, let me go here then, what about the community of what I call low expectations, where can a leader lead individuals but continue to blame other ethnic groups for their failure? Is that possible, Pastor John?
No, if a man doesn't work, neither shall he eat.
Wow. So what about those who continue to elect the same individuals? Should one continue to put their ethnicity above the very principles that they say they believe in, Pastor John?
Nope. Our values don't have a skin tone.
So what you're telling us in that if an individual comes into a place of maturity, they can no longer continue to do the things they do that causes what I call the genocide in their community to continue to happen. Is that a fair summary of what you just shared?
You have well said and stated the truth.
Pastor John, where can our audience find you, sir?
You can follow me on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at REVWU Truth. That's REVWU Truth. Thank you so much for your support. I am going to Las Vegas, Sin City, next Thursday to speak at a school board meeting. I need your prayers.
Hey, you got it. Everyone, the Erase Project, Pastor John, he's doing a tremendous job, not just in North Carolina, but he's doing it across this globe. You want to follow him. Pay attention to what this young man is doing. He's a godly man. He loves his family, and he loves the United States of America. I always say the greatest nation on this earth. We're coming right back. You don't want to miss the rest of this show. We'll be right back. I think one of the unfortunate things that all of us are paying attention to is what I call the false narrative that the media continues to spin any chance that they really get. What they can't do is they can't succeed at this. One, truth always wins out. It's just timing. It may not come out exactly when you would like for it to come out, but the reality of it is you can't suppress truth. It's going to rise. It's just inevitable that it's going to happen. A few days ago, I was in my ex-city of Chicago, and I spoke with a Syrian-born man, has been living in the Chicago area for the last 25, 30 years of his life now, still very deep ties to his native land, that is Syria. And I found it very interesting. He was probably one of the most palatable men I've had a chance to kind of chew the fat with. Forgive me for the pun and the metaphor there. But he was a phenomenal man, a businessman, very successful man, and a very concerned man, because he's watching a city in total decline over policies that are impacting him. By the way, he didn't ask me to talk about this. I wanted to share it with you, but I wanted to first allow you to see something, again, coming out of the city of Chicago, a city that I was raised in, high school, college, family, etc. Once one of the most beautiful places, designed #1 architect for so many decades. Now it's something akin to, I don't know, a foreign land that I don't even recognize anymore. It's very hurtful. And when I saw this one clip here, which I'm going to show you, it's going to kind of echo what we've been doing all day. Let's go to that clip.
They smashed the window. They would get inside and went through the whole bar and the basements and everything. But what they were doing was scouting out the place to come back again. So they actually have tried to break in a second and a third time. And other bars in the neighborhood have been broken 3 or 4 times in a week. But just in our neighborhood alone, there's about 25 bars that have been broken into.
And so rather than say, you know, as a business owner, we hope that we can turn this city around and things will get better, they said, no, it's pretty bad. You need to protect yourselves. Get some riot-proof glass installed was the suggestion. And you priced that out at how much, Declan?
We had one price from Chicago Bar Shop that did a call on it, and it was $84,000.
I hope you heard that business owner. That business owner, like the Syrian gentleman that I met just a few days ago in the city of big shoulders, Chicago, Illinois, a city where my father was so incredibly successful. He did things that in his community had never been done before. My dad's name is in the business annals there of Chicago as being an incredibly successful man. Watching my grandparents raise just godly children, godly family, godly grandchildren. And now it's a city that I don't even recognize. I looked at this business owner here, and I began to look at some of the stats. Think about what you just saw, just with individuals just going into businesses and ramshacking them. It's up over 131%. Let that marinate for just a moment. 131%. 16 to 19% thievery happens all the time there. It's up just from last year, and last year was horrendous. It's going on an uptick. It's the same thing, unfortunately, across most cities. Let's stay focused on Chicago here for just a moment. Notice what the police told him. Hey, buy better windows. These are the same cities that will fight citizens from legally owning guns while allowing individuals that have no business with guns to have very light prison sentences. Commit a crime there, the cash bail, just Chicago's doing something no one else has done. They're saying, hey, you don't even need this anymore. Forget, we're going to eliminate cash bail. What is that going to do? It's simple. I commit a crime, I get right out. Only thing I have to do is say, hey, I'll be back. Yeah, wait for me. This is what's going on. This is why businesses are fleeing that area. My heart breaks. It really does. For not just that business owner, not just a gentleman from Syrian descent that I met just a few days ago. It breaks because these cities have certain policies. And here is where, in my opinion, the rub is. How do they continue to justify voting for governors, mayors, city councilmen, city council people, attorney generals, district attorneys that don't represent the values that they say that they want? Yet when things go bad, people like Charlemagne the God and others, they'll say it's whites, they're racist. They just don't want to be around people of color. People of color don't want to be around people of color if they're ripping them off. If there's breaking into their business, the only thing you can tell a business owner, buy better glass. Not that we're going to give you the money to buy the better glass. Notice what they don't tell them. They don't say, hey, arm yourselves. Intruders break in. You have a right to defend your business, what you have worked for. Take down those intruders. Make sure that they never have a chance to operate again. The moment that happens, however, you'll see the BLM movement. They'll come in and they'll riot. By the way, they're paid for by groups like George Soros. They'll come in and they'll riot and they'll boycott you simply because you protected your business. And God help you if you're white and you protect your business in a city like Chicago and the person that maybe committed the crime is not white. You'll be called a bigot, that the system worked for you, that there could have been a better outcome. Yet our police are on a stand down. Why? Because the mayors, like the mayor in Chicago, he ran on a platform. It's hard to even make this up. He ran on a platform, we're going to defund the police. We're going to put in social workers instead. I asked the Mayor Johnson there, how well is that working out for you? Where the radio stations like the WVONs, once the stalwarts of Chicago, they push this nonsensical propaganda all the time. They're actually encouraging people to continue to vote for people that are causing this type of genocidal behavior in their own communities. How can a nation or community last like that if there are no buffers, if there are no parameters around it, if there's no one there to say, stop, this is wrong, you're going to pay for this? What type of fallout are we looking at? We're looking at an absentee of parental involvement. We're looking at, as Pastor John said earlier in one of the segments, we're looking at fathers that are no longer in the home, and when they're not there, you got it, the kids become parented by the states. Why is it that we're afraid to talk about women that continue to have babies that the state has to take care of? Why aren't these topics? Why are these not issues that we can get down to the nuts and bolts and say, we got to stop this. This is not good for any community. Yet the citizens of places like Chicago, they continue to put individuals in that are causing their own demise. Flash news bulletin. That is not, I repeat, that is not the white man's problem. It's your problem. If you're black or brown or you're white, and you continue to put in people that are helping foster the demise of your city, is it safe to say you get what you deserve? Because if you're not willing to change, as we were taught in philosophical classes, then you're continuing to look for a change, but you won't change. That is the definition of stupidity. Let's stop being stupid. Let's wake up. Let's take this nation back. Let's put in men and women in office that really represent family, more important, God, laws, and our views to raise our children the way we desire to raise them. I'm going to wrap up this show in the next segment. Stay tuned. cry of freedom. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that when society no longer has a conscience, it is a result of leaders that have unfortunately divorced themselves from what they are really called to do. This nation was built upon a Judeo-Christian ethos. I don't care where we are right now. History is clear on that. You don't have to be a believer. I say this to individuals and groups, sometimes even lecturers. You can be an atheist, but you can't deny the fact this is what this country was built on. No, it was not built on racism. That's ridiculous. Some say, well, no, it was built on slavery. No, it was not built on slavery because, again, it is impossible for a group of whites that come from this region, the United States of America, in the 1600s to get in their little rowboats and go across the Atlantic and get over to Africa, in some kind of way round up 25 million African people and then sell them back to themselves. It's a crazy number. We get what really happened was black on black crime, black leaders selling out other leaders or other people to people like then that would become the Americas, Portugal, Islamists, etc., etc. But when there's a Judeo-Christian ethos that is being lived out, again, everywhere you've ever studied in history, it seems to work. Unequivocally, by the way. Everywhere those things are taken away, you'll see the collapse of a nation. When those principles are lived out, one of the principles that you often see is the principle of education. This is the reason why the Democratic Party, in the formation of this nation, did not want people of color to read. Why? They understood something. They understood that if people were educated, they then would have a voice in what they were doing. So education becomes key. Do you think it's an accident that in these areas where we see these blights, that we see education at the bottom? I want you to look at a graph. I'm going to explain the graph while you're looking at it. I think it's going to shock you. Look at it right here. It's very, very clear. This is out of Illinois, the state of Illinois, higher education. You look at the percentage, look at where they're rated, and the pre-K through 12 is number 5. This is scary. Why? You cannot be on the bottom of that list and expect great things to happen. Why are we seeing these numbers like this? There was a book that I read many years ago by Dr. Jawan Kunjufu. I don't know if he was out of Chicago, but I heard his lecture while there in Chicago. He was an educator, had his doctorate, and so phenomenal writings. And he began to compare what was going on in the educational system. This is going back in the 70s, 80s, but it was so phenomenal because he took the idea away from the reader that you could not succeed or could succeed based on skin color. It had nothing to do with it. In Dr. Jawan Kunjufu's writing, he was very, very clear. He showed the aptitude of young kids, regardless of their color, how well they were doing, but then became a breakdown. The breakdown had several factors. One, it had everything to do with environment. Why do you think that every 4 years, teacher unions continue to push their jargon? They want to continue to control your children. They want to be able to teach them what they want. You would think, but that's pretty wicked. Why wouldn't they want kids to succeed? Well, in part, it would eradicate them from having a job because they wouldn't be able to get up every 4 years and say, elect me, because of the wide social gap between black and white kids. Education is fundamental. I said this in the earlier part of our show, and this is a statistical fact. 2 families, black or white, if they do the same exact pattern, education, no children before marriage, they actually have the same exact employment numbers. In other words, there's no 18% and then 4% because one is white and one is black. Doesn't even exist. Why don't you hear things like this? It's intentional. They're trying to continue to divide us. This is why every week on this show, we shine the light on it. This is why YouTube, just in the last few days, they've banned me. Why? It's simple. They don't want this type of data out. It doesn't fit their narrative. This is also why groups like iHeart and MTV, they push guys like Charlemagne. They can continue the rhetoric and they'll make you feel good that your problem is because of someone else. No, your problem is because of you. Let's shine the light on it. Let's change it. We can. Let's get back to our foundation. Let's get back to our roots. Let's get back to raising our children. And if we do that, we'll turn this nation around. It won't be black or white. It'll be the United States of America. Until next week, I bid you peace.